So I just wanted to offer a case study so that you have a better understanding about what happens in depth hypnosis, in a depth hypnosis session. And also I'd like to just talk a little bit about what you can expect out of depth hypnosis training as a practitioner. So one of the things that happens in a depth hypnosis session is that there is a process called the taking of the emotional biography and the process of taking the biography of the presenting problem. And when these two processes are coming together, there's a map that emerges for knowing where to go in the process of discovery with the person who is coming for help. Once that map emerges, there's a process in the second session called the first trance. And this is an adaptation of a shamanic journey wherein the person is guided into a connection with the part of themselves that has only their highest good as its sole intent. This creates an anchor for the deeper work of the regression work and the other shamanic processes that are part of depth hypnosis. So in the first three sessions, you often have a pretty profound change in the way that the person is looking at their symptoms. And I'd like to offer you a very important case study, I think, that demonstrates how quickly things can change in depth hypnosis. So this was a woman who, in her early 30s, who came for help with chronic fatigue. And in the first session, we looked at her dreams, and dreams are a huge part of depth hypnosis, and I can talk at length about dreams, but I will continue on in my process of talking about the emotional biography and the biography of the presenting problem. What we found in that first session was that as a young girl, she had been very much enamored of the rituals and the processes of the Catholic Church. And she became an assistant at the altar whenever she could, and she really had a deep and abiding love for God and for Jesus. And one day when she was about 8 years old, she told the priest that she was going to become a priest and that this was going to be her life's calling. And the priest laughed at her and said that she was a girl and this could never happen. This was just part of the emotional biography. She didn't really put too much emphasis on it, because I asked a question in that biography: what was your relationship to the universe or to God when you were little? And this was an answer that she gave. Then she went on to talk about her early teenage years, where she had become increasingly depressed, where she didn't really want to go to school. She started having social anxiety by the time she was 13. And then I continued asking the questions, and then she talked about developing a real anxiety disorder by the time that she was in her early 20s, and really having to go on medication and really not being able to finish school. And then she talked about becoming so exhausted from not being able to sleep that she became more and more enmeshed in these chronic fatigue symptoms. So when she came for help, she had been in bed for a couple of years, not really able to do much of anything. And so we did the second session where we got her connected with the part of the self that had only her highest good as its sole intent. And this part of the self can take any form that has meaning to the person. And in this case, it was really interesting because this part of the self took the form of an angel. So in looking at the map that emerged from what I've told you briefly about this emotional biography, it looked to me that the root of the problems was in the disconnection with spirit that she experienced when the priest laughed at her when she told him that she wanted to be a priest. And remember, I've said in other programs that in depth hypnosis it's understood that if a symptom is not addressed on a spirit level, it will move to a mental level. And if it's not addressed on a mental level, it will move to an emotional level. And if it's not addressed at that level, it will become physical. So here you have this anxiety and this depression setting in as she moved through her teens. So you had the spirit level disruption moving in to the mental level with the anxiety, the emotional level with the depression, and then you have the physical manifestation of chronic fatigue. So what we did in the third session is we did a regression back to the time where she was really focusing on the exhaustion that was in the fatigue. And we did wind up back at that time where the priest had told her that it was impossible for her to be a priest herself. And so we did the processes of soul retrieval there in the form of a regression. And then we did more and more power retrievals through the forms of regressions. And then we worked with other processes in depth hypnosis, such as insight inquiry. And within probably 3 to 4 months, she was back on her feet. She was out of bed. She was looking at rediscovering her love. Her love for the divine. And as she re-engaged with that, she got better and better. Her anxiety lessened. She slept better. Her depression lessened, and she actually wound up going back to divinity school, or going to divinity school and finding her path. And that's what healed her. So the disruption on the physical level could be traced back through the emotional and mental levels and to the spirit level. And working with the processes of depth hypnosis beyond the conceptual mind, she was able to reclaim herself and heal herself with the processes of depth hypnosis.